We live in a time when Christian men are going to have to learn how to fight. Good morning, Saints. David Long here from the Ministry 10 Good Men. And I'm standing in front of a second abortion clinic here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. This is a smaller clinic. I've already recorded at the other clinic, the Planned Parenthood across town. It's the major clinic. This is a smaller clinic. They do morning after abortion pills here. And so therefore, this smaller clinic may not get as much attention as the larger clinic, as it may be in many cities. I am told that 70% of the abortion centers in this nation have no Christian presence in front of them. So the women coming into here seeking an abortion, if they're under 9 weeks, they can get the morning after a pill abortion. But even if they're over 9 weeks, this clinic has another full surgical abortion clinic in another city nearby, and they will refer them to that. So this clinic, every abortion center in America needs a Christian witness. We need prayer. We need sidewalk counseling. We need a Christian witness here, including this abortion center here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Now, I've moved across the street, and I want to tell you why. I'm on the other side of the street from this abortion center, and the reason is I'm standing in the parking lot of a church. I'm standing in the parking lot of a church. Now, I have often said that the American church has made peace with child killing. There's no better picture of that reality than the fact that right across the road from the front door of this abortion center is a Christian church. It happens to be a Baptist church, but it really doesn't matter. It's a church. And yet, this abortion clinic has no consistent witness in front of it, as is the case in 70% of the abortion centers. That means over 500 abortion centers in the United States have no Christian witness. You know, there's a scene in the movie Braveheart where the men of the village invite William Wallace to a war council meeting, and he refuses to go. And he says, if possible, I would like to live in peace, raise a family, have my farm. And it turns out, I won't spoil the film, but it turns out later that that war came to his family, and he could not get in the war. You know, it's in the heart of every man to live at peace. We weren't created to be at war perpetually. We were created to love peace, to desire peace, to want peace. But we live in a time of war. In fact, we were born on a battlefield. That war is raging. It starts in the spirit, but it plays itself out in lives, in families, and in cities, and in cultures. The war is constantly going because the enemy, he is constantly looking for whom he can destroy. And that's just not individuals, that's families, and that's whole cultures, that's nations, and that's cities. We find ourselves in a time when men are going to have to learn how to fight. We're going to have to learn how to be warriors, first in the spirit, then in the natural. We're going to have to learn how to fight the culture war. I want to ask today, do you know how we lost this culture war? Do you know how we lost this battle? Over the last 120 years or so, church leadership in America has, whether knowingly or unknowingly, has preached a message that there is no culture war and that we shouldn't be involved in it if there was a culture war. And they've preached peace, and they've preached prosperity and blessings, and let's get saved and let's get to heaven. Meanwhile, so the result of that was we abandoned the mountains of culture. Politics. Let's talk about politics for a second. We wrote the Constitution. We wrote the U.S. Constitution. That's very political. Christians wrote it. But here we are, over 200 years later, and who's stewarding? We're not stewarding it anymore. Let's talk about education. We founded 6 of the 8 Ivy League schools in this country expressly for the purpose of training Christians to spread the gospel of the kingdom to all spheres across this nation as this nation developed and prospered. Now look here, 250 years later, we've abandoned those Ivy League schools. Now they're bastions of demonic liberalism, really Marxism, truth be told. This is true of entertainment. This is true of all 7 mountains of culture. So the question becomes, how are we going to learn to fight? How are we going to learn to fight? How are we going to learn to fight in the spirit? How are we going to learn to fight the culture war? Because the culture war is real. And just as I said with the example of William Wallace, the same is true. This culture war is coming to your family. Now, we're in early December 10th, I'm recording this video, and the presidential election is contested. I personally believe, and will go on record as saying, I think Trump will prevail. But it ultimately doesn't matter, because the 7 mountains of culture are still controlled by those who hate our God. And that might be a setback for them, but unless we begin to get back involved in the culture war, eventually, 4 years from now, it just gets worse. So we have to learn how to fight. We have to learn how to fight in the spirit, and we're going to have to learn how to fight in the natural. How are you going to get trained to be a warrior? Maybe there are different options for you, but I'm going to tell you 10 Good Men is one of them. 10 Good Men is an institute really designed to help Christian men get involved in the culture war and to be trained to be involved in the culture war. There's a picture in Nehemiah where Nehemiah taught the people who were rebuilding the wall in his day to have a trowel in one hand and a sword really at their side or in their other hand, because they were going to have to defend what they were building. And that's a good picture. But you know what? That was after the judgment came and they were in the season of rebuilding. The picture needs to be a little bit reversed at this point. Christian men need to learn how to operate with a sword in one hand and a trowel in the other. How are you going to get trained? So how will you get trained? One of the things that we do here at the ministry 10 Good Men is a thing we call the Mountain Men. And the Mountain Men is a play on words from the historic picture of the rugged, individualistic mountain men who helped to explore and settle the Western Front. They were furs, trappers, usually traveled alone, and very tough, rugged, individualistic types. It's a play on word between that historic picture and the 7 mountains of culture which we need to learn to ascend. We're going to begin to start to provide some video training along that front, but I would also like you to start to think about next spring, 2021, late March, early April, we plan to host a training, our first training for the mountain men, and we're planning to host it in the Smoky Mountains. I don't have a date yet, but I hope you'll just begin to think about that, and we'll be sharing that date shortly. And the theme of the first year will be Base Camp Boot Camp. I'll talk more about that later, but in this case, Base Camp because we're learning to ascend mountains, but Boot Camp because that mountain is occupied, and it's going to have to be approached not just as if you were recreationally climbing a mountain, but it's going to have to be approached with a sense of sobriety because the enemy is occupying that mountain. Those who hate our God are already on the 7 mountains of culture. So Base Camp Boot Camp will be our first training. It'll be in the spring of 2021, and we hope that when you see that date, we hope that you'll join us. You know, when the humanists were looking to take over the 7 mountains of culture, they understood that the crown jewels of their pursuits was abortion. If they could get to the place where they could literally kill unborn children, and the church would do very little about it, would really not try to stop them, hardly at all. If they could get to that place, they knew that they had won the culture war. They could do anything, and so they went on to do the rest of the things. So therefore, the battle for the soul of America starts here, in front of 700 abortion centers all across this nation. So I invite you back to the basic core plan of Operation Ground Zero. Would you join me? I need 700 point men across this nation. Now we're up to 5. We have a new young man in upstate New York who's taken responsibility for an abortion clinic up there, and we are growing. We are at 5. Now we need 695 more. And the role of a point man is very simple. You get a partner, and you and your partner, 2 gentlemen, you pray for an hour a week in front of the local abortion center, and your goal, your objective is to set out to recruit a minimum of 10 that would join you, that there would be 10 praying at every abortion center in America, and that you would build from there. And that this would be a foundation. This would not be the end of the story. This would be the beginning of the story. This is where we begin the battle. We learn how to do spiritual warfare, and we ask God to give us every place where we put our feet in the Spirit, and we ask Him to give us this culture back, starting with abortion. So I leave you with this challenge. Will you commit yourself to learning how to fight? This is David Long, 10 Good Men, in front of an abortion center in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Thanks for listening. God bless.